Well, good morning, everyone. I'm John Doberstein, Senior Editor at No-Till Farmer. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled From Residue to ROI, Smarter Post-Harvest Management That Pays You Back. With that, let's welcome our featured speakers today. Dustin Blunier is the Director of Agronomy at PhycoTerra. He is an experienced agronomist and agribusiness professional with a strong track record in commercial agriculture industry. A certified crop advisor, Dustin brings over 2 decades of expertise in agronomic consulting, precision seeding technology, and product development. Chad Rubbelke is the owner of Rubbelke Farms, a 3,000-acre farm operation and a respected voice in the on-farm research communities. Raised in a family where conservation and sustainable farming were central, Chad's grandfather's environmental stewardship left a strong impression, shaping Chad's belief that healthy soil and science-led decisions are essential to productive farming. Chad manages all facets of the business: marketing, financial planning, mechanical operations, and scientific experimentation. And he's pushed for innovation in how inputs are applied. He also plays a leadership role in an on-farm research with a footprint spanning North Dakota and Iowa. He continually tests and refines practices, harnessing data and tweaking inputs to boost yields while preserving environmental health. And with that done, I'm going to turn this over to Dustin.
Thank you, and good morning. Pleasure to be on this webinar, and just want to check real quick if screen is sharing that we do have the PowerPoint up, chat, or if one of you can give me kind of a thumbs up if it looks good. All right. So today we're, the title is, residue to ROI. So we're looking basically at how do we manage a field after harvest, or in that, time frame from harvest to planting. I like to colloquially call it the off season for crop production. And so how do we look at that? Residue is a big part of that, and it's a key tool to setting us up for the growing season as we move into 2026. And so that's our focus for today. Is we're going to kind of dig into how we can look at that residue. But I want to start off by kind of setting up the framework of how we at PhycoTerra look at microbiology, or the biology that is in your soil. And to start that off, I want to kind of talk about the spheres. We call it the spheres of influence. But when we talk about spheres, we're talking about like the rhizosphere and the spermosphere. And what those really are defined as is they're distinct hotspots or moments or microbial interactions that happen either in the soil or in and around our cropping system that do that work of that soil ecology, or the microbial activity that we've all become accustomed to trying to understand and learn and know now that is significantly important to our systems and to our management. And so when we talk about these hot spots or these spheres, really what I would draw your attention to is think of the old 80-20 rule. Roughly 80% of the work gets done in about 20% of the soil or in that environment. That's where we're really kind of focused within our spheres. You probably heard about the rhizosphere and the spermosphere. The spermosphere is right around that seed that's working during germination and early emergence, and then obviously during the growing season. That root to soil interaction is where we talk about the rhizosphere. And so we work with those quite a bit in trying to understand when is the optimal time, what is the optimal way that interaction with that soil biology works with those. But there's also a couple of other ones that we've learned through our research and over time that really kind of contribute to our cropping system. And one is foliar, the phyllosphere is what that's called, but that's looking at basically that leaf tissue and the foliage on that plant as it's growing and maturing through the growing season. And then today, when we talk about residue, we're talking about that it's called the detritosphere, but we're talking about basically that active microbiology that's going to be recycling that crop residue for future use within that soil ecology. And so we really take kind of a holistic approach to microbiology and active biology in your soil. We're looking at that bacteria and fungi. Is what we are looking at is, can we increase that activity in these areas to basically create both, I call it offensive and defensive characteristics in that crop development. So can we help that plant grow in germination, get higher germination rate, get better seedling vigor, get that stand established a little bit faster? Can we help that plant from a defensive mechanism? And when we get dry conditions, can we help that soil hold water more? Can we help that nutrient availability, that nutrient cycling throughout that season? That's what we're looking for from a value standpoint with creating that active life, that active biology that's in that soil. And we're talking here with no, obviously, if you're on this is a targeted for no-till. In a no-till environment, these elements become even more amplified because we are looking to we need that activity within that no-till environment of getting that benefit within there. So that's kind of the approach or the perspective that we're bringing into this space. So when we look at that detritosphere, we're looking at that residue management. And so residue basically has value, but I like to call it its value is it's a raw material or raw product. It's not a finished product when we get done with harvest. And so in the field, how can we help finish that product? And so the way I kind of look at that and define residue management is really what we're looking to do is we're looking to accelerate in a reduced tillage or in a no-till environment. We're looking to accelerate that decomposition of crop litter. And the reason that we're looking at that is you have variables within residue management. Too much residue, you can have antagonistic effects with moist and cold soils. You can have poor seedbed conditions, challenges preparing that seedbed. And then also as that's breaking down and tying up, it can tie up nutrients and it can create an environment where you can see increased disease pressure. The flip side of that, when you don't have enough crop residue, you're opening yourself up to erosion. You can see a loss of moisture. You'll destabilize that soil environment, which is going to cause challenges with soil quality, nutrient availability, and a big component of residue is it's rebuilding that organic matter or building that organic matter that's within your soil. And so what we're looking to do when we're talking about residue management is we're looking to basically kind of in a minimum till environment, we're looking to kind of accelerate that because we've kept that on top and we need to break that down and return that into that soil. So let's look a little bit at the beginning. I say the kind of the current paradigm or kind of the beginning elements of how we've tried to manage residue management over the years. And so I like to start with this little graph here. I'm sure many people have seen this before, but it's basically kind of just an illustration to kind of show what's happening specifically to the nitrates in the soil when we are going through breakdown. So breakdown of residue is tied to the seed-N ratio. So in corn, that's an average of roughly 40-1 on your corn litter or corn stover. Your wheat straw is going to be about 80-1. And so those are kind of the two ones I kind of focus in as examples is because those are kind of the common ones that we are challenged to break down and come back in with a productive crop. So some of those current practices is physical management, chopping it up through tillage or through stalk choppers or mowing, breaking that residue down into smaller pieces is one way that we have over over a course of history, tried to manage that. It has limitations in the standpoint of you're still keeping it on the top. You're not introducing more opportunities for moisture and microorganisms to work on that within that. And those are the factors that really are what drives tillage, or I should say, managing the size is helps from a physical standpoint, but it actually doesn't accelerate that breakdown. You still need the microbiology, you still need the moisture, and you need the temperature to actually break that down. And so tillage or chopping is something that we've seen can do some of the work, but it can't do the real heavy lifting. The next thing that we've brought in over time is we've used like increased nitrogen. And that's why we use this graph here, is we show how that immobilization or that tie-up occurs because of our high C/N ratio. And so you can really, what you're doing here is you're negating this tie-up within your soil. And that can see indirectly, that can see some bump in our acceleration of decomposition. But there's a limited return on that because it is an indirect proportion, and we're just basically trying to kind of capture that recapture that tie-up that's going on. So that's one element. And then the final, I kind of put two here together, but adding living biology and humics. Obviously, that living biology, you're increasing the microbiology, the bacteria that would work on breaking those down. Humics work very similar in the standpoint of, like with nitrogen, what they're going to do is they're going to help hold and chelate key nutrients that's going to help continually feed that. The challenge with this is we're here today. I'm from West Central Illinois. It was 36 degrees here this morning, and we're in the third week of October. Living biology needs warm temperature, it needs moisture. And so as we look at that off season, as we look at from October, November, all the way into whenever you're going to plant, say April or May, we're dealing with conditions that challenge that living biology. It's going to be intermittent through that season. You're going to get warm weather that could potentially break that down. You're going to be dry. You're going to have moisture. So those are the elements that we see with that. What we do with our component is we bring in microalgae technology. And what is that? So our product and our company name is PhycoTerra. And basically PhycoTerra is microalgae. Microalgae is a natural occurring organism in soil. There's different strains of that, but generally throughout the soil, it is known as the smallest organism that can photosynthesize. And so what we do is we actually grow the microalgae, we process it into PhycoTerra. Phyco is food for the ground. That's where our name kind of comes from. And so what we're doing is we're feeding your existing, or if you've introduced biology into your program, we're going to feed and activate that those organisms and that ecology. And what that looks like, I'll start here first with, and these are called agar plates. So this is a plate where we have soil agar that we can look at growing. What we're doing here is we're introducing PhycoTerra from the residue that we put on the plate. And what we're doing is we're increasing that diversity and abundance of both fungi and bacteria. When I talk biology, microbiology, I'm talking both of those elements because we're going to feed both of those existing spectrum that's in your soil. So you can see here where we have our non-residue management practice on that residue. We have mainly bacteria, and there's limited growth. That's what we would expect to see when we've done this and tested it. That's generally the visual that we come up across a lot of different spectrums. On the right side, what you're seeing is a much more diverse. If you look kind of underneath I will point out kind of the hairy type substance structures on this is the fungal component. And underneath that, if you look really at the details, you'll see a lot of different colors and shapes of bacteria that are growing on this plate. That signifies a very diverse population that's growing. That's what we're doing as a mode of action is we're activating those components by feeding them and getting those life cycles going so that when conditions are right through this off-season time frame, we'll get accelerated breakdown and activity on that. How do we measure that? So what we look at is we look at basically the biomass reduction. So from harvest to planting and even beyond planting into the next season, what's the rate at which we're decomposing that crop residue? And what we have seen across all of our studies across our crops is we're averaging a 21% reduction. That's a 21% reduction in the rate of crop residue between application in the fall, right after harvest, to planting. So what that is we're breaking that soil or that residue on the surface. We're breaking that down and helping that decompose all of those components into the soil. The other thing that we're observing is we're seeing when we do that, when we have that extra activity, what's happening in the soil, in the topsoil of that environment, is we're seeing a 3 to 5 degree increase in our soil temperature at planting. And so that's increasing our opportunity for ideal conditions for planting, whether that's earlier planting, extended growing season. We see a lot of value when we can do that. And which basically a product of that extra activity in that residue breakdown that is causing that increase in temperature and improved soil conditions. To show you kind of how we measure that and how we get those, I'll go into kind of one of our studies. This was done in Whitewater, Wisconsin. So we're kind of in the northern section of the Corn Belt and the growing area. Here's how we look at that increase in that topsoil. So at application, you can see here, we applied this in the fall. Our soil temperature was at 50 degrees. You can see here we have our treatment, and we measured it again at the first freeze, as well as when we were coming out of the winter freeze at spring thaw, and then at planting. I'll point out here, we do not condone planting at 40 degree soil temperature. This was done prior to planting as they were warming up, but that's the kind of the metrics and the vernacular that we use as we get to planting. But you can see here how the temperature changes as we've increased that activity. We get that warmer temperature as we're approaching that planting, because we're getting activity throughout that winter time frame. When we flip over to the mass or the biomass reduction, you can see here same exact trial, just the different measurements. You can see how we basically on our control and our mass, how we're measuring it at all those different points. A look at this trial. We looked at 1 quart, 2 quarts. Our recommended rate is 1 quart per acre. You can kind of see here, like we do see some benefit to that 2 quart, but generally it's not enough economically to kind of justify that cost. So we go with 1 quart as our recommended rate. And you can kind of see here just how that works throughout that warm up time through the spring. Couple other visuals and examples. So, moving into Nebraska, this is what you're going to see in the field. So you're going to see that in corn, you're going to see that stalk breaking down. You're going to see that activity. This was taken basically at spring, right at planting. You can see the differences between the stalks within that treated and untreated areas. I pointed out, if you might recognize these agar plates, this is where that study came from. Again, this was where we go in. We actually took these agar plates off of those residue samples that you saw in the pictures, so you can kind of see that's why, or what you see from this in increased activity. Another example of it, just Rockford, Illinois. You can see here different soil, different environment. You can see that the complex of the microorganisms is slightly different. But you can still see kind of the same take home as you're seeing that increased activity. This is what this particular field looked like. On the left of the screen, you see basically that intact stalk, and then on the right, you can see where the stalks are just more progressed in their breakdown. These pictures were taken April 1st. So we're still kind of early before they kind of get into that planting. We're about a month before they planted was where we're started seeing that result. So that's a little bit of the technology behind what we're talking about. I'm going to kick it over now to Chad, and he's going to kind of walk through some of his experience that he's had with Residue.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name's Chad Rubbelke, I guess, from the central North Dakota area. So first of all, thank you to PhycoTerra. We've been very fortunate to be able to have a long-term working relationship with this company. A lot of times just with the research and development portion. But what's really unique about this company is they're really committed to research. So I want to really applaud PhycoTerra in particular. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that, research maybe comes second-handed to a lot of different of their metrics in their company. PhycoTerra has done a phenomenal job of representing the research portion and making sure what they're selling is correct. So thank you for that. I guess if we want to kick her off here, we'll get to the next slide and go from there. So we're going to really talk today about the North Dakota site. So I have a site in Iowa and in North Dakota that we do a lot of our R&D work through. In particular, we were looking at canola, hard wheat, durum, and soybeans in the northern region. And in the southern region, we usually do corn and soybeans. So we're going to be really focusing in on the North Dakota site for today. With our breakdown trials, we did 3 years of trialing with PhycoTerra. Within those 3 years, we did 3 sites per year. So what was interesting about our research that we looked at, we were not only in just average conditions, we had excessively wet scenarios and excessively dry scenarios through these 3 years of research. So it kind of gives you a plethora of the field environments weren't necessarily perfect for residue breakdown, but we had the extremes both ways. Dustin, if you want to go to the next slide. All right, so within those sites, we're going to really kind of focus in on, our North Dakota site, but I just pulled and plucked a few of our residue breakdown weights throughout our years of trialing in the residue breakdown metrics for these sites. So first of all, what we're going to see is kind of an idea right away that our untreated normally came in higher weighted averages than our treatment areas. And this was kind of unique because it doesn't matter what site, what condition we had throughout the year, we were seeing increased breakdown with the treated portion. So, I mean, as all data sets combined, I added a few of these that actually lost. But overall, if you take an average through all 3 years of trialing, we definitely saw a substantial increase in the breakdown weights. Okay, Dustin. And this is kind of how these samples were taken. So we take a 1 square put together, I guess, deal, and we'll throw it on the ground in randomized spots. We'll take a photo of it, and we'll take the weights that are collected through that. So we leave the stubble that's actually standing alone. We just take the residual that is on the ground level that, to the soil level. So what is unique about this and why I'm so excited about the PhycoTerra product is simply the fact that this is randomized. With a combine, our residue doesn't necessarily equally go over the ground when we're combining. So, I mean, there are some metrics that you can look at that say, hey, like, overall, like if you take certain areas of the field, it's going to be heavier residue than others. But when you take that extended look at it and take all 3 years into account and the multiple replications that we did, we come out with, a very good picture on what the product does. And that is showing that the breakdown is taking place with the product. Okay, Dustin. Not only did we just do weights on those locations and those areas, we also did soil temperature at the surface. So what was interesting about this is we just took a thermometer. I think it was one of those. I can't remember exactly what we used these years, but we took the soil temperature at the surface of all of our treatments, and we took them, on multiple data sets. So right away, on average, we saw increase in temperature through all of our research. Now we're just looking at 23, and I wanted to look at 23 because this is our average temperatures from our soybean study, our canola study, and our germ study. And these are the residues that were left over from the previous year. So, I mean, the 2023 derm study would have been derm residue going into soybeans. 2023 canola stubble or residue would have been canola residue going into hard wheat. And then 2023 soybean would have been soybean going into derm. But what's interesting about this and what I really take away from this is the canola and derm residual, which were the greatest, amount that was out in the fields, broke down the greatest amount. Now, on our soybean study in 2023, 2022, we didn't have the greatest soybean crop. So you can see right away that we had less residual on the surface, which equaled to less of a result from the PhycoTerra product in particular. Okay, Dustin, if you want to go on to the next one. And also in these studies, which we kind of went a step further, we wanted to see what exactly our frost depth was when it came to springtime. So in North Dakota, we're froze probably 8 months a year, it seems like. But because of our increased frost depth through the winter time, it takes a long time for that frost to go out in the spring, equaling a better chance of successful planting. So what we wanted to look at is when that frost is coming out of the ground, obviously it goes down. We can take a probe and we can measure exactly where that frost depth is in the spring relative per treatment. And what we were seeing on average is extremely increased frost depth with the treated portion. So that's equal in that we have a warmer temperature on the surface area throughout that soil profile. We're having more microbial activity, which is causing our frost to come out of the ground quicker than on the untreated. So that was kind of the final portion of what we were looking at that really showed us that this product was not just working in one metric, but overall in the whole system, it was showing results and it was doing what it was supposedly supposed to do, I guess. All right, Dustin. And these are just some photos from our trials in particular. Again, we have our 1 foot square and just kind of how we would take those metrics. But what's really interesting on this portion, why I put it on there, is our residual amount is sometimes skewed. So from treated to untreated, I mean, we're not always getting that perfect spread from our combine on that those trial acres. So sometimes we'll have a larger amount of residual versus the untreated. You can see right away that we're seeing that dark coloring from the treated portion that Dustin had brought up before on his photos. In particular, this sample weighed less than are untreated. So, I mean, not only is, sometimes your mass might be greater, but in particular, you're breaking down that, that residual where it's making lighter, it's making it more crisp. So, I mean, overall, especially when you're in a no-till situation, I foresee it being a great enhancement when it comes to plantability in the spring. Okay, Dustin, you go on the next one. So not only did we just do a residual breakdown, so throughout the multiple years that we've worked with PhycoTerra, we've done seed applied products, in-furrow products, herbicide products, and fungicide products. And also we have been fortunate enough to do some studies where we've used the entire realm of products and the entire system of products throughout the entire year. So we'll go on to it, I guess, when we get to it. But overall, these products are kind of unique in a sense, because not only is it good for one aspect of the year, but you can also use this product portfolio throughout the season and see results. All right, Dustin, if you want to keep going. So we're going to start kind of with the seed treatment aspect. So in particular, for these seed treatment trials, we have a treater set up on our air cart, on our air seeder, and we treat right into the tank. So we add our fungicide, insecticide, and in this instance, the PhycoTerra seed treat all together, and we'll treat going on board onto our air cart. So we struggle sometimes when we treat. We want to watch our bridging. We want to watch how that seed is, how wet that seed is going into the tanks. And what is really unique and what we like about the PhycoTerra product is it treated really well. It had a really good dry fast. Going into the seed treat tanks in general, we had no issue whatsoever. So that made it a product that we're probably very unique in that sense, that we're treating right from our right into our cart and seeding right away. But I mean, it kind of shows that this product is something that's very user friendly in the seed treat aspect. Now, what we see on our seed treatment in general is a lot of secondary root formation right when that seed is germinating. We'll see that on our wheat and I guess our soybean photos right here. You can kind of see, and it's hard to really see the which one's untreated and which one we have on here, but you can really see an enhanced root growth. So on wheat in particular, we're seeing 2x the amount of root structure soon after that seed germinates. We're showing increased vigor. If you're looking at that plant that's coming up, you can tell right away that, we have just a darker green color. We're a little bit taller. It just has a little bit of an increased vigor coming right out of the ground. Now, in soybeans in particular, we see that root structure increase, but we also see a stem size increase. So, I mean, that just shows and tells me that, these plants are healthier coming out of germination. Okay, Dustin, if you want to go to the next one. So then we get to our herbicide timing, and it kind of goes right along with the seed treatment. I mean, we keep seeing that foliar growth increase and increase of root depth. Now, what I really enjoy about the herbicide timing is, especially in North Dakota, we're using a multitude of different chemistries when it comes to our different cropping system. I mean, we don't only do wheat, canola, and soybeans, but we also do a lot of specialty crops that take some unique chemistries to, take out weeds. And PhycoTerra, as of today, we haven't found anything that it hasn't been compatible with. So this kind of plays into the fact that not only is it helping increase and stimulate our cropping system, but also it's something that's very easily put into our portfolio when it comes to what we're going to spray. We don't have to worry about compatibility issues or anything like that. So in particular, we kind of see where our herbicide lies. With the herbicide application, we've seen me personally, I think that we see a little bit of a reduction in stress with those plants when we add this product to the herbicide application. So I really enjoy using it, and it is something that we do see benefits year long with. Hey, Dustin, if you want to go to the next one. And we get into the fungicide time frame. We've done multiple trials with the foliar product that's made for foliar application at this time frame. In North Dakota, we usually see extreme stress in that July timeframe. July and August are normally our dry season. So, I mean, we're wheat producers. We want to take off our grain nice and dry and not have rain on it. It helps our quality quite tremendously. So a lot of times that also equals a lot of our later season crops are stressed to the max because it's hot, it's dry, and they're trying to set pods and trying to, produce seed. So in the fungicide time, and we've seen this kind of correlate to higher yields and just a healthier plant going into that aspect. So in particular, like our canola, for instance, canola is one plant that if you stress it out at flowering, you're going to reduce your flowering time frame, your pod set, and you can severely reduce the yield by having hot, dry conditions. In particular, we had, I think, 2 to 3 years of trialing with the PhycoTerra product, and we saw some pretty good yield advantages when you used it at that late season time frame, helping that plant stay healthier and helping it kind of get through those stresses. We utilized it in wheat and durum, and we saw similar results, even in better condition years. Hey, Dustin, if you want to go on. So really, this kind of gets to my takeaway from the personal use. So it tank mixes with mostly everything that we've tried. We've put it in furrow with products with, liquid tanks. We've utilized it foliar with herbicides. We've utilized it with seed treatment. It's really kind of a product that's pretty unique in the aspect that we really don't have any issue with it going into any of our other mixtures that we use on the farm. So we've never had really any filter plug-in issues. So, I mean, that's kind of secondary to compatibility. We want to make sure that this product isn't, clogging things up throughout that system. And we run exact apply, and we don't have any issues at all with any of our filters. All right. So, our seed treatment aspect, it shows a lot of visual results in stressful conditions. Most of those photos that I showed you are in environments of stressful conditions. So, I mean, visually, I think visuals are going to be seen when we have really cold, wet conditions or really hot, dry conditions in the spring. Now, it's going to work no matter what, but those are the visual timeframes that you're really going to see this product perform. Now, does it perform even in really good conditions? It does. It's just most of those visuals that we had shown are from our extremes. So with the herbicide treatment, I really think that it helps with your herbicide hangover. So, I mean, I know that it doesn't correlate to soybeans and corn as substantially, but when you put harsh herbicides on these cropping systems, we do see a pretty good response to that plant, kind of metabolizing those herbicides and coming out of that, hangover situation quicker than on the untreated. And we've seen photos of, in harsh time frames when we've had really hot, dry conditions or really cool, wet conditions, our herbicide hangover situations are increased. And there's been a lot of time frames where we've seen visual responses to the PhycoTerra product when you're getting into those really, really stressful conditions. And, it does add a foliar appeal no matter, what conditions we usually run in. So kind of the fungicide treatment takeaway, we've seen some pretty good yield gains with the flowering application with canola and durum. So that's kind of my personal use takeaways from the product. Dustin, if you want to go to the next one. Okay, and then I guess that's about all I have, and we'll kick it back to Dustin. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chad. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes before we open it up here to kind of questions. So just kind of put a bow on this. So we talk about that microalgae technology, and appreciate Chad kind of broadening that scope of where we're feeding those zones and how we're feeding throughout the season, and can kind of take advantage of it. So my big take home here is we're taking that natural food source, we're growing that at our facility in Arizona, and bringing that to your field, so where we can boost that biology. And that's our ultimate goal here, is to boost that biology and really just get more out of that very valuable asset that you have, which being your soil. And so that's kind of the take home that I really want to kind of end this on, is, kind of how we're doing that. What's the value proposition for that? Is, we've kind of put together some numbers, and obviously, again, with the no-till, you probably already realized some of those tillage savings. But, when we talk about that decomposition, we talk about those soil temperature increases, there's some real value to that. You can run kind of your own numbers, but when you look at how we're putting that when we look at that decomposition, we're returning NPK that was in that residue back to that soil faster, potentially in that first year. And so that can get to real money. And some of the challenging economic climate that we're in, that can be potentially the difference between profitability and running, break even or at a loss. We're not adding, obviously you're going to get that down the road, but managing that to a specific crop is really one of those peak values that we see within that residue component. And just as we talked on overall, when we look at feeding that microbial population in those hot spots, what we're really doing is we're really trying to boost the efficiency. We say ROI, but what we're really trying to boost that efficiency of your inputs and the ability for that crop to grow more effectively and more profitably for you. So with that, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, but I thank you for your time here this morning, and we will open up for any kind of questions. Happy to kind of spend the next few minutes addressing any questions that you might have had through the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Dustin. There are some questions that have come in, and we're going to go ahead and answer those. First one is, please explain how corn roots have a higher CN ratio than corn stalks. Anyone want to take that?
I actually have never had that question before. It's really just basically my understanding. It's the composition of that plant biomass. The differences between that, it's a little bit denser. From the standpoint of, you have a lot more density within the roots than you do your above ground matter. So I think most of it really kind of comes from that as much as anything else.
Right. Okay, good. Good. Jorge Camacho asked, have you seen prevention or control of soil diseases such as fusarium and phydium with PhycoTerra application? If yes, which rate did you apply?
So we stop short of talking about control of soil-borne diseases, but what I will say is, as we've interacted with the product with the PhycoTerra, one of the things that you do see is we are that increase of microbial activity creates a more robust environment. It is tougher for a disease. If you look at the disease triangle, you have to have that susceptible host. And so when we increase that natural biology, what you're doing is you're taking away components of that susceptible host within the environment. So you could potentially see where you would have a, I would say, less persistence of those type of soil-borne diseases, but I wouldn't want you to come away from it with the idea that that's going to control that soil-borne disease. What we would generally do is we would say, what I would say, or what I'm comfortable kind of saying is, we would help the effectiveness of those control products because we're reducing that susceptible host environment and we're boosting that activity that's going to kind of exclude the persistence of, say, a fusarium, or I'm assuming you're talking like PhytoTerra or Pythium within that soil.
Great. Thank you, Dustin. Good answer. Jorge also asked, can you reduce the rate of agrochemicals when you mix these products with PhycoTerra?
Generally, we don't recommend that. Obviously, we want you to stay within the recommended rates of manufacturers. That is our position. But as I kind of stated to the fusarium and the pythium, that those kind of things, I do think, and I'll let Chad kind of speak to it on, kind of some of his experience if he's willing. The complementary effect of, we focus really actually more on the nutritional side and the nutrient efficiency. We haven't really looked and studied much on the agrochemicals. So, Chad, I don't know if you can speak to any of your personal experience on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, don't cut rates. I mean, that's just not a good practice in particular. What I was more focused on and what we saw when we were doing these trials is just the ability of those plants to come back. So, I mean, I think it more has to do with just a health perspective. So, I mean, not only do we have bacteria and fungi underneath the ground, but we also have it above the ground all over our plant surfaces. So I know that, when we utilize these products, there's a very good correlation and interaction between foliar bacteria and fungi to that plant. So I mean, they're kind of more synergy than what we normally think. So I mean, by boosting those synergies on the plant surface, we're just helping that plant to become healthier and kind of respond in a better way post herbicide application. So I mean, this product in my eyes does not have any influence on killing a weed or increasing fungicide ability on that plant. It's just more of just helping that relationship on that plant surface to thrive and to make that plant healthier post application.
Good. Thank you, Chad. One question I had was, with the organisms, do they linger in the soil for any period after the use as kind of passed, do they just kind of fade into the environment like one would expect?
Yeah, so I think I understand what you're asking. So we're bringing food to the existing biology, and so what we're seeing is we'll see a burst or an increase in the activity. So like if you're, kind of if you plotted it on a line over time, the treatment would see an increase in that. We use CFUs or colony forming unit measurements. You're going to see a burst, and that what that is that's the feeding that's going on within that. And so every time that we feed, we see that burst of activity. We estimate we've seen it in the lab last a little over 14 days. It's really it's about impossible to quantify it in a soil environment, but we assume 14 to 21 days is the persistence of our product. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see that burst of activity, and then you're going to see a kind of I call it a cascading effect. If you guys are old enough to remember like the old Windows when like something would go wrong and like all the windows would pop up, that's what I envision happening in the soil is all these microbes are just active and just going nuts for a while. And so you see that happen after that feeding's gone. It lasts for another couple of weeks. So we say about 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to see that boost of feeding. Environmental conditions could potentially bring those back if you were in a completely compared environment. But what you're seeing is you're seeing that diversity and you're seeing that cycling happen. So you have we talk about dormancy a lot of microbes and bacteria. And what we're doing is we're accelerating that cycle. So the more that we accelerate that cycle, the higher percentage that we break dormancy, the more frequently we break dormancy, the more active and more robust our biology is.
Great.
And if I can just say something on, that kind of correlates with Dustin's examples there. This is not living. So, I mean, when we look at a lot of biological products, you have to have a very good environment or they have to be very robust to survive, multiple different environments in that soil. So what's really unique about the PhycoTerra product is we are seeing that increase in fungi and bacterial progression, but we aren't throwing something living into that system that can or can't survive it. So, I mean, that's what's really unique to me is you're able to hit on the bacteria, fungi, your biological realm without trying to have that product survive.
Great. Thank you. That's really good information. I'm sure everyone will appreciate that. We had another question come in. Is there any nitrogen, sulfur, or carbon sources that you're adding to help with the breakdown in trying to balance the CN ratio?
So in the trials and research that we cited here today, there wasn't. That was standalone. However, you certainly can. There would be a complementary effect specifically with like that nitrogen and sulfur. If you're doing nitrogen and sulfur, obviously microbes love those two nutrients. They're critical to that microbiology cycle. So by all means, we would be complementary to that, and you would help balance that C/N ratio. You'd release more nitrogen if that's needed. So you certainly can. The interesting part of that question is the carbon sources. So depending on what the carbon source is, yes, if you're looking at a carbon source to create or enhance chelation, complexation of that nitrogen, you certainly can. Carbon source is a big term. It's a big umbrella. So, on some of those, what you really want to be a little bit careful of introducing too much carbon, because we're a carbon source as well. We're very balanced as a food source, but if you're talking carbon from like say a sugar, you want to be careful you could maximize that and actually get kind of an antagonistic effect on that microbiology. So nitrogen, sulfur, yes, absolutely. Carbon sources like your humics and your fulvics are going to certainly help with that process as well. Your more processed and your more food source type carbon sources, you do want to watch. There is a point of diminishing returns in a single application.
Right. Thank you, Dustin. I think that's probably a question a lot of people have is how can I use this product effectively with and do no harm, in the process when they're thinking about adding something in. We have another question. We are using sugar. Oh, it was really more of a comment from Regan. We're using sugar, humics, and fulvics, usually a pound of sugar and 2 quarts of humic fulvic mix.
Yeah. So, I mean, no problem with that humic and fulvic. I would at a pound of sugar, you're probably okay. So I would say you could complement that mix. You could also start looking at. I would be careful. Probably once you start getting beyond that pound of sugar, that's where you could start getting it's. I call it kind of a lethargic effect. It's kind of the buffet table. You eat too much at the Thanksgiving buffet or Thanksgiving meal, you want to go take a nap. Microbes are kind of very similar. If we feed them too much of the good stuff, of the fun stuff, they can kind of get into that same thing. But the mix that you're talking there is generally in a pretty safe. It's you got to get a little bit higher than that before we start seeing that. But it is a great question, and it is certainly a good management tool to be looking at within those mixes.
Great. Great. Thank you, Dustin. I don't see that any other questions have come in, and we're getting close to an hour here. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to wrap this up. Want to thank everyone for these great questions and answers, and thank you to Chad and Dustin for putting on a great presentation. Just as a reminder, today's presentation and audio will be made available on the No-Till Farmer website. You also get an email within 48 hours of the recorded presentation, so watch your email for that. On behalf of PhycoTerra, Dustin, Chad, and No-Till Farmer, thank you for joining us today and for today's presentation. Enjoy the rest of your day.